It's not your silence that breaks him. It's your evolution. Silence without growth is just a pause, but silence with transformation is a storm. When you stop trying to prove your worth and start embodying it, the energy around you changes. You stop waiting for his validation because you finally see yourself through different eyes. You don't beg for closure anymore. You become the closure. You don't need to post quotes, subtweets, or stories to make him notice what he lost. Your life starts speaking for itself. The glow on your face, the calm in your voice, the confidence in your decisions. That's what breaks him faster than any no contact ever could. A man doesn't start missing you when you go silent. He starts missing you when you start shining. When he looks and realizes that the woman who used to shrink for him is now standing tall, smiling deeper, and moving with purpose, that's when it hits him. Because he expected your world to stop when he left. He expected your light to dim, but instead it got brighter. And that's a kind of pain his ego doesn't know how to process. When you evolve, you're not just moving on, you're elevating past the version of yourself that he once knew. You're no longer playing the same emotional game, and that makes him irrelevant to your story. The truth is, people don't regret losing silence. They regret losing energy. The energy that once poured into them now rests. And that's what breaks him faster than any game. When he realizes your silence isn't about him anymore. That you're not waiting for him to notice, to call, to fix things, that you've stopped orbiting his existence, because when your world stops revolving around his approval, his ego loses oxygen. He feels it, the shift, the emptiness, the absence of your emotional gravity. And that's when it hits him. The woman who once waited has moved on, and the silence that used to belong to pain now belongs to power. Your energy must speak louder than your absence. Anyone can disappear, but very few can evolve so profoundly that their energy lingers louder than their silence. You see, it's not about blocking him, deleting him, or pretending he doesn't exist. It's about becoming so rooted in your own light that your absence vibrates through his world without you saying a single word. He should feel the shift in your energy, not because you posted a quote or staged a smile online, but because your entire vibration has changed. The woman who once chased, who once waited, who once settled for breadcrumbs, no longer exists. She's gone, replaced by a woman who doesn't chase. She attracts. When you rebuild your energy, everything about you begins to speak before you do. Your posture, your peace, your glow, it tells a story that words can't match. You don't need to post pictures for him to see how you're doing. Energy doesn't need Wi-Fi. It's felt in the moments he least expects it, when he's lying awake, wondering why his peace feels different. That's when your presence, the version of you he took for granted, returns not as memory, but as consequence. Because he doesn't just miss your messages, he misses what your energy brought. Warmth, peace, life, light. And when that energy leaves, it leaves a silence he can't replace. You break him, not by removing yourself physically, but by elevating yourself emotionally. When your energy becomes untouchable, when your aura shifts from anxious to aligned, it creates a dissonance in him. Because the version of you he remembers no longer exists. He can't trigger you anymore. He can't pull you back into cycles of confusion because you become self-contained. You don't seek closure, you are closure. You don't seek attention, you are attention. That level of energy makes him question everything he thought he knew about you and about himself. This is the kind of silence that echoes. It doesn't beg, it doesn't plead, it doesn't prove, it radiates, it moves differently. It commands respect without demanding it. When your energy starts speaking louder than your absence, that's when you break him, not by vanishing, but by evolving into the version of yourself he can still feel but will never have access to again. He doesn't crumble when you disappear, he crumbles when you outgrow him. Disappearing makes him curious, but growing makes him regretful. Because when you vanish, he might wonder where you went, but when you evolve, he realizes he no longer fits in the world you've built. That's the kind of realization that breaks a man from the inside out. The woman he once knew, the one he could predict, manipulate, or comfort himself with, no longer exists. Her softness is still there, but it's now guarded by wisdom. Her heart is still open, but it no longer waits for him to value it. When he sees that you've outgrown him, it's not your distance that hurts him. It's your transformation. Men don't fear losing contact, they fear losing relevance. When you start showing up as someone whose life no longer orbits around his absence, that's when he begins to crumble. He scrolls through your page, listens to your name being mentioned, and realizes something has shifted. You're not bitter, you're blooming. The glow that used to depend on his validation now comes from your own sense of purpose. That truth cuts deeper than silence, because it means you no longer need him to feel alive. You've learned how to generate your own light, and that's what terrifies him. He thought your love was his safety net, that you'd always be there waiting for him to figure it out. But when you grow, when you start demanding emotional depth and peace instead of potential and promises, you raise the standard to a level he can't reach without growth of his own. And that's what truly breaks him. Realizing you didn't become colder, you became clearer. You didn't become unreachable, you became aligned. And now, everything he once took for granted requires effort he's not ready to give. Outgrowing him doesn't mean you hate him. It means you finally chose yourself over the illusion of what he could be. That realization is what makes him crumble. Not the silence, not the distance, but the truth that he can't find the version of you who once tolerated his confusion. She's gone, replaced by a woman who doesn't chase love, but attracts it effortlessly by being everything she once begged someone else to see. And that's a loss no man recovers from easily. Boundaries are louder than silence. Anyone can disappear, but it takes real power to stay and still say, this is as far as you go. The truth is, silence might confuse him for a moment, but boundaries make him face himself. Boundaries aren't walls, they're mirrors that show him exactly where his behavior no longer works. They don't scream, they don't beg, they don't chase, they simply exist. And that existence alone shakes him. Because a woman who enforces boundaries isn't emotional, she's intentional. She doesn't run, she stands, she doesn't threaten to leave, she means it when she walks away. And that energy cuts deeper than anything you could ever say. When you have boundaries, you're not trying to teach him a lesson, you're teaching yourself self-respect. You're no longer negotiating your peace for temporary attention. You're no longer explaining what should already be understood. Boundaries don't need an audience, they just need consistency. Every time you choose not to reply to disrespect, every time you say no without guilt, every time you stop trying to convince someone to do the bare minimum, you reclaim your power inch by inch, and a man who once felt like he could cross your lines freely will feel that loss like gravity. Because your boundaries make him realize that your love is no longer unconditional. It's earned. He might test you. He might try to push back, expecting the old version of you to fold. But this time, you don't react. You don't explain. You just enforce. That calm firmness is what truly breaks him. Not anger, not revenge, but the simple realization that his access to you now comes with terms, that he no longer owns your emotions, your time, or your peace, and that realization is where his power collapses, because he can't manipulate clarity. He can't guilt-trip self-worth. The woman with boundaries doesn't need to scream her worth. Her silence after a no says it all. Her peace is her proof. Her energy becomes sacred ground, and only those who know how to respect it are allowed in. And that's what breaks him faster than any distance ever could. Because once a man sees that your love is strong but no longer submissive, that your heart is open but no longer accessible on demand, he realizes he didn't just lose your presence. He lost his privilege to it. The moment you stop reacting, everything changes. Because nothing breaks a man's control faster than a woman who no longer dances to his rhythm. Reaction is fuel. It feeds his ego. It confirms his importance. It tells him he still has power over your emotions. But when you stop reacting, when you stop explaining yourself, defending your worth, or trying to make him understand, he feels the silence like a mirror reflecting his own emptiness. The power dynamic flips instantly. He used to get validation from your emotions, but now your calmness leaves him questioning his own. That's when he starts chasing, not because you're gone, but because your peace has become more attractive than his chaos. Emotional control is the most underestimated form of power a woman can hold. Because in a world where everyone is trying to prove a point, the one who doesn't react stands out as untouchable. When you stop reacting, you stop giving him the blueprint of your emotions. He no longer knows what triggers you, what makes you jealous, what brings you back, and that uncertainty eats at him. He realizes He no longer knows how to reach you, how to pull you in, how to control the tempo. You've become a mystery again, and mystery is what men chase. But this time, it's not the mystery of a game, it's the mystery of a woman who's mastered her emotions. When you stop reacting, you force him to face his own behavior without the distraction of yours. He can't blame you, can't twist the narrative, can't pretend you're the problem, because your peace exposes the truth. The silence becomes heavy for him, but freeing for you. And that's the shift that breaks him, because he realizes you don't need to prove anything anymore. Your energy speaks without confrontation. Your peace becomes your revenge. Your growth becomes your closure. The woman who once over-explained now smiles and walks away. The woman who once fought for clarity now understands that silence is the only response some people deserve. And that's when he starts to crumble. Not because you're angry, but because you're indifferent. Nothing dismantles a man's control faster than a woman who no longer reacts, because indifference is the final stage of freedom. And once you've reached it, he knows he'll never have that power over you again.